I never expected to be home that early. My flight had been canceled last minute, and I didn't bother telling anyone, not my husband, not even the housekeeper. Just wanted to walk into my own home and feel something that wasn't scheduled or expected. The house was quiet when I stepped in, lights off except for the hallway glow near the bathroom. I carried my bag upstairs, thinking maybe I'd just take a bath and sleep. But then I heard it. A low sound, muffled voices. Not a conversation. Not music. Something else. I paused outside the guest bathroom. That's when I realized someone was inside. At first, I assumed it was my husband, but the voice, slightly deeper, younger, told me otherwise. My stepson. I froze. I wasn't trying to spy. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I leaned just slightly toward the half-closed door. That's when I heard it, my name. Whispered. Repeated. I didn't breathe. His voice cracked as he said it again, lower this time. It wasn't just a slip. It was deliberate. My name, wrapped in want. For a second, I felt sick. Then confused. Then something else I hadn't felt in years, heat. Not shame. Not guilt. Just presence. I stepped back before he noticed. My pulse was loud in my ears. I didn't wait to hear more. I crept back downstairs, not knowing what I had just stumbled into or how to carry the weight of it. My husband's car was gone, as expected. He wouldn't be back until morning. I poured myself a drink, hands shaking only slightly. What disturbed me wasn't just what I saw, or rather heard. It was how it made me feel. It wasn't disgust. That scared me more than anything. I wasn't repulsed. I was alive. And that realization hit harder than the shock itself. We'd lived together under the same roof for over 2 years now. Polite smiles, casual dinners, the occasional family outing. He'd always been distant, respectful, but distant. He never lingered in conversation, barely looked up from his phone, didn't seek connection. I didn't either. He was my husband's son, nothing more. Until today. I tried to dismiss it, tell myself it didn't mean anything. A private moment, a slip of a name, maybe a coincidence. But I knew better. The way he said it, soft, reverent, like it was the only word he needed. I replayed it in my mind on a loop, each time with more clarity, more weight. That night, I didn't tell anyone I was home. I just lay in bed, lights off, ears straining for footsteps that never came. I wasn't sure what scared me more, that I'd caught him doing it, or that a part of me didn't want him to stop. The next morning, everything looked exactly the same, but nothing felt familiar. He was in the kitchen when I came down, leaning against the counter, phone in hand. He looked up, nodded. Didn't know you were back. I said nothing for a moment, just poured coffee. My fingers were steady now, but my pulse wasn't. He avoided eye contact, but not completely. There was something tight about his posture, like he was waiting to see if I'd mention it. I didn't. But the silence between us wasn't neutral anymore. Over the next few days, he was everywhere, quietly, without trying, or maybe trying too hard to make it seem like he wasn't trying. We kept crossing paths. In the hallway. By the laundry room. Near the patio. Too often to be chance. Every time, it was like a pulse beneath the surface, a shared secret neither of us spoke aloud. I should have confronted him, drawn a line, said something final and firm. But I didn't.
And he didn't either.
My husband didn't notice a thing. He barely noticed me. Dinner was quiet, just the three of us. He scrolled through his phone while we ate. My stepson looked at me once when I laughed at something meaningless. That one glance said everything. It wasn't a look of apology. It was something closer to recognition. I started watching him in subtle ways. How he moved, how he kept his distance but stayed just close enough. There was restraint there, measured, careful, not immature or reckless. That disturbed me most. It wasn't some boyish infatuation. He was aware of what he'd done, aware of what he wanted. And I was beginning to realize I didn't hate that. He found me in the living room one night, reading. About the other day, he started, eyes down. I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't ask what he meant. We both knew. It won't happen again, he added quickly. I looked at him then, held his gaze just a second too long. All right, I said, calm, unreadable. but he saw something in my eyes. His shoulders dropped slightly, not from relief, but from the tension of holding something in. We didn't speak about it again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay still, listening again. Not for my husband's snoring, not for silence, but for his voice. I hated that part of myself. I hated that I was waiting for something I knew I shouldn't want. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. This wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about him. It was about me being seen, being desired, being real again. In the darkness, I remembered every detail of that moment outside the bathroom. The tone, the breath, the way he said my name like a secret. It haunted me, not with shame, but with need. And once that kind of need surfaces, it doesn't go away quietly. My husband left early Friday morning. A conference out of town, nothing unusual. He barely said goodbye. By the time the door closed behind him, I already felt the shift. The house was quieter, air heavier. I moved through the day like it meant nothing, but every hour dragged with expectation. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. In the evening, he came downstairs. I didn't say much. He hovered nearby, looking for a reason to stay in the same room. I gave him one. We sat on the couch, something playing on the TV, but I couldn't recall a single scene. There was too much silence between the words. He glanced at me once, then again, then didn't stop. I think about it a lot, he said suddenly, his voice low.
I didn't need to ask what.
The room held the answer between us. I looked at him. That's not something you should say out loud. He hesitated. Maybe, but it's true. I should have left. I should have told him to go to his room, shut the door, forget this happened. But I stayed. I didn't lean in, didn't pull back. I let the moment stretch. It was dangerous. And I didn't care. He inched closer, not rushed, not aggressive, just real. I could feel the weight of his breath before I felt his hand brush mine. When he touched me, it wasn't accidental. My breath caught. I should have ended it right there. But I turned my hand over, let his fingers slip between mine. I shouldn't want this, I whispered. I know, he said, eyes fixed on mine. But you do. It wasn't about age or roles or titles anymore. It was about timing, hunger, and how quickly lines fade when you feel something you've missed for too long. When he kissed me, I didn't resist. I kissed him back with a desperation I didn't know I'd been carrying. It wasn't rough. It was slow, almost reverent. No fumbling, no confusion. Like he'd imagined this 100 times. Everything after that moved with terrifying clarity. Clothes discarded in silence.
Skin on skin.
He was careful, focused, as if this wasn't about conquest but connection. Every movement asked a question I didn't know how to answer, except through the way I held him, touched him, pulled him closer. When it was over, he didn't speak. Just lay beside me, our breathing the only sound. I stared at the ceiling, heart still racing. The room felt different, like we'd crossed into a version of ourselves we couldn't return from. I didn't feel guilt. Not then.
Not yet.
I felt claimed.
Seen.
And horribly calm. I slipped out of bed while he slept and walked to the kitchen. The silence felt heavier now, but not lonely. I poured a glass of water with steady hands. I had done something unforgivable, and I wasn't sorry. He didn't come downstairs the next morning. I knew he was awake. I could feel it in the air. The quiet was no longer peaceful. It was full of unsaid things. My husband came back that afternoon. Same routine, same tone, same hollow questions about my weekend. I answered like nothing had changed, though everything had. I watched him sit across from me at dinner and realized how far apart we'd grown, how automatic we'd become. He didn't notice the difference in me. He hadn't noticed much in a long time. My stepson avoided me for days. No stolen glances, no chance moments. Just absence. But it wasn't cold, it was careful. I knew what it meant. He was trying to protect the moment we'd shared by not destroying it with repetition or need. But I felt the shift. The part of me that had gone untouched for years had been seen, held, awakened. I couldn't pretend that didn't matter. One night, My husband made a comment in passing, something about how distracted I'd been lately. I shrugged it off. But I could feel his gaze linger longer than usual. It wasn't suspicion. It was confusion. Like he was trying to remember who I used to be. He couldn't. And I wasn't going to remind him. Days later, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Folded neatly, no name. Just 4 lines. I meant every second. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I've never felt more understood than I did in that moment with you. I stood there holding the paper, my hands perfectly still. He hadn't signed it, but he didn't need to. I kept it, tucked it between the pages of a book I hadn't touched in years. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't try to repeat it. What happened had already changed everything. It didn't need to happen again to stay real. He left for campus a week later. He hugged his father, gave me a quiet, steady look, then walked out the door. That was it. I never confessed. Not to my husband, not to anyone. But I changed. I started taking long walks alone, stopped pretending to laugh when I didn't want to, and looked at myself differently in mirrors. I had betrayed someone. But I'd also found something I didn't think existed anymore, desire with meaning, not just heat. A brief moment that told me I was still capable of being felt, wanted,
Alive.
Most people would call it a mistake. Maybe it was. But it woke me up. It stripped away years of numbness. I don't know what it meant for him in the long run. I don't know what kind of woman that makes me. But I know I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't feel used or ashamed. I felt human again. That's what haunts me more than guilt ever could. The fact that, deep down, I don't regret it. Not even a little.